It's going. All right, we have, in the adult Sunday school class, we've been studying the book of Mark, the Gospel of Mark. And now we are starting Mark chapter 3 as we finished Mark chapter 2 last week. And beginning in Mark chapter 3, starting in verse 1, it reads, "And he entered again into the synagogue, and there was a man there which had a withered hand. And they watched him, whether he would heal him on the Sabbath day, that they might accuse him. And he saith unto the man which had the withered hand to stand forth. And he saith unto them, Is it lawful to do good on the Sabbath days, or to do evil, to save life, or to kill? But they held their peace. And when he looked around the room on them with anger, being grieved for the hardness of their hearts, he saith unto the man, Stretch forth thine hand. And he stretched it out, and his hand was restored whole as the other. And the Pharisees went forth and straightway took counsel with the Herodians against him, how they might destroy him." The writer of the lesson points out, the man's hand was withered, but God's mercy had still preserved to him the use of his feet. He uses them to bring him to the public worship of God, and Jesus meets and heals him there. How true is the proverb, "It is never so ill with us, but it might be much worse." In other words, that this person might have a withered hand, but the truth is that at least he had the blessing of his legs so that he could meet Jesus. The critics of Jesus expected him to heal this man with the withered hand. By their expectation, they admitted that Jesus had the power of God to work miracles. Knowing this, they watched him closely so that they might accuse him. They knew what Jesus could do, yet their knowledge didn't draw them to Jesus. It was as if a man could fly, but the authorities wanted to know if he had a pilot's license. That, yeah, this person, he has gone to school, he's gone, to the FAA, he knows all about aviation, he's able to fly an airplane, and he's sitting in the cockpit of the airplane, and all of a sudden a bunch of authorities show up and ask him, well, are you licensed to fly? Well, duh, of course. Have I done all this other stuff? Yes, I am licensed to fly. The religious leaders watched Jesus closely, but with no heart of love for him. They knew about Jesus, but they did not know him. They also knew Jesus would do something when he saw this man in need. In this sense, these critics had more faith than many of us because we sometimes doubt that Jesus wants to meet the needs of others. When Jesus asked, is it lawful on the Sabbath day to do good or to do evil, to save life or to kill? In this question to the religious leaders, Jesus emphasized the truth about the Sabbath. There is never a wrong day to do something truly good. According to their Sabbath traditions, if you cut your finger, you could stop the bleeding, but you could not put ointment on the cut. You could stop it from getting worse, but you weren't allowed to make it better. So under the law, if somebody cut open their leg, they could patch it, stop the bleeding, but they couldn't sew it up. A doctor couldn't heal it. She couldn't do anything to take care of it. And so that's so silly about laws, and it's true. When you have ridiculous laws, at a certain point they make no sense. Many, many years ago, I had a book that I got from the library that was called, laws around the United States that were ridiculous, and you went by state by state. One of my favorite ones was in Maine, that it said it is illegal for your car to impersonate a wolf. Your car to impersonate a wolf. So it means you can't put ears on it, put a tail at the end, or is it that it couldn't have wolf-like behavior? But it's hard to imagine. In Oklahoma, though, that I think it was Ardmore, and you couldn't, a man and wife could not kiss each other publicly on Sunday. This is like old laws, and it was illegal to hunt whales in Oklahoma.
As if we need that.
I know, but see, that's kind of how ridiculous it is. It's like, who's going to go whale hunting in Oklahoma? I mean, we have alligators, and we have other types of animals, but a whale, and I guess, they were thinking maybe if we had if our zoo was big enough to have a whale in it, but that somebody couldn't come and hunt it. But whales are illegal, most species outside of specific periods of time, or it's illegal to hunt anyway. But see, that's kind of how ridiculous some of these laws are. And that's, it's like this, is that they're all worried about the keeping of the law. They didn't care about the life of the person at all. When speaking about Jesus looking with anger, being grieved for the hardness of their hearts, this is one of the few places where Jesus is described as having anger. And he was angry at the hardness of men's hearts. Jesus was angry because this was a perfect opportunity for these critics of his to change their minds about him and their traditions. But they refused to change their minds and rejected Jesus instead. In this, we can see that Jesus deliberately used this occasion to provoke a response. Jesus could have done this the next day. Jesus could have done it privately. But he chose to do it at this time and place. He was giving these people every chance to see him for who he was, that being the Son of God. And I think we've all been there when you have been arguing with somebody when you're absolutely 100% right and you know they're absolutely wrong, but they utterly refuse to accept truth or reality. I mean, it's every time you talk to your kids, pretty much. It's like, look, you said, look, I know you think you know what you're doing, but you don't. This is why. I have all this evidence, I have all these facts. This is why this is not going to work. But they absolutely refuse to listen. Then you see them go out and get hurt. And you're like, well, it grieves you. It upsets you because you know what you're talking about. It's just like me when I'm at work and I have a person call in and want to tell me how to do my job. I'm like, dude, I've been in this industry for 20 years. You've had service with us one. I think I understand how the network works and why this is not working. Oh, they're wanting to tell me, and they're completely wrong. It's frustrating because you can't get anywhere with somebody like that until they begin to listen. And that was grieving Jesus, is that here are these people that he's giving them every opportunity and showing them miracles, showing that he has the power to forgive sins, showing that he can power to heal diseases, showing in his doctrine that he preaches with authority, and yet their hearts are so hard they absolutely blind themselves to the truth. When Jesus says, stretch out your hand, in this Jesus commanded the man with the withered hand to do something impossible, to move his paralyzed hand. But as the man put forth the effort, God did the rest. God never commands us without enabling us. This man might have reasoned thus, Lord, my hand is withered. How can I stretch it out? Make it whole first, and afterwards I will do what thou commandest. This may appear reasonable, but in his case it would have been foolishness. At the command of the Lord he made the effort, and in making it, the cure was effected. The Pharisees went out and immediately plotted with the Herodians against him, how they might destroy him. Jesus did nothing but a wonderful miracle. In the response, two parties of former enemies, the Pharisees and the Herodians, agreed together with one cause, to destroy Jesus. Luke 6:11 says that the critics of Jesus were filled with rage when Jesus healed this man. Which was more of a sin against God and a violation of the Sabbath? When Jesus healed a man, or when these hate-filled men plotted the murder of a man who never sinned against anybody? That it was wrong for Jesus to heal this man, but they had no problem going out on the Sabbath day and plotting murder. That's really saying something. A stanza from My Song is Love Unknown by Samuel Crossman catches the irony of this. The lyrics goes like this. Why, what has my Lord done to cause this rage and spite? He made the lame to run, he gave the blind their sight. What injuries, yet these are why. What injuries, yet these are why. The Lord Most High so cruelly dies, that even though he did nothing but good and never harmed anybody, the hate and blindness of his enemies moved them to destroy him. The Herodians were not a religious party. They were a group of Jews who were sympathetic to King Herod and supported his rule. Now moving on to verse 7. But Jesus withdrew himself with his disciples to the sea, and a great multitude from Galilee followed him, and from Judea, and from Jerusalem, and from Idumea, and from beyond Jordan, and they about Tyre and Sidon, a great multitude, when they had heard what great things he did, came unto him. And he spake to his disciples that a small ship should wait on him because of the multitude, lest they should throng him. For he had healed many, insomuch that they pressed upon him for to touch him, as many as had plagues. And unclean spirits, when they saw him, fell down before him and cried, saying, Thou art the Son of God. And he straightly charged them that they should not make him known. The crowds came to Jesus near the Sea of Galilee from distant places. Yet it seemed that this crowd was attracted to Jesus more because of his miraculous works than because of his message, when they had heard how many things he was doing. It is wonderful for people to be attracted to Jesus, but if their focus is on what he can do for them instead of who he is, then they will not follow him for long. And this is true. I was telling Grandma one Sunday night, during our little evening get-together that we have, that I was talking about this church down on near the interstate, that anytime they had all these things for like food days and stuff for people, like on Thanksgiving they'd have free turkeys, thousands of people, the whole interstate would be backed up as them trying to get into that parking lot. And yet, on a normal day when the gospel is just being preached, their parking lot is, while not empty, has all these open spaces. You don't have anybody trying to get in there. And that's kind of the point, is that people are attracted to getting things they want, but when it comes to actually following Jesus with your heart and doing what the gospel says or hearing the gospel, they don't want it. And that's the same difference. These people wanted Jesus because they wanted to get something from him, not because they knew he was the Messiah and that they should follow him. The demons addressed Jesus as the divine Son of God in a futile attempt to render him harmless. These cries of recognition are designed to control him and strip him of his power. In accordance with the conception that knowledge of the precise name or quality of a person confers mastery over them. In other words, they're trying to get Jesus to admit something that they could use against him, but Jesus, of course, would not give in to anything they tried. Moving on to verse 13. And he goeth up into a mountain, and calleth unto him whom he would, and they came unto him. And he had ordained 12, that they should be with him, and that he might send them forth to preach, and to have power to heal sicknesses, and to cast out devils. At this time, Jesus was at a critical point in his ministry. Responding to the opposition, he spent a whole night in prayer, and chose 12 disciples. He had offended the traditions of the religious leaders, and they plotted his destruction. Great crowds followed him, but they were not interested in spiritual things and could be quickly turned against Jesus. His response to all this was to pray and choose leaders to train. In one sense, there was nothing in Jesus' 3 years of ministry before the cross more important than this. These were the men who would carry on what he started. Without them, the work of Jesus would never extend throughout the whole world. Therefore, he made the choice with God's wisdom. He called to them those he himself wanted. A disciple was a student, but not in a classroom in a lecture sense. A disciple learned by being with and hearing from his master. A disciple was an apprentice and learned from the master firsthand. He appointed these from among his larger circle of followers, and he appointed them that they might be with him. The first job of the disciple was simply to be with Jesus, to learn from being around him. Then in a second sense, he chose them that he might send them out to preach. A preacher will only be as useful to Jesus to the extent that he has been with Jesus. There is little done for eternal good by those who preach without having a real personal relationship with Jesus Christ. A disciple was a learner, a student, but in the first century, a student did not simply study a subject, he followed a teacher. There is an element of personal attachment in disciple that is lacking in the student. He might send them out to preach and to have power to heal sicknesses, to cast out demons. When someone has been with Jesus, and is sent out to serve him, they can expect that Jesus would give them power to serve him, including power to do the miraculous works, heal sicknesses, and to cast out demons done in their midst. The business of minister of Christ is, first, to preach the gospel, second, to be physicians of the soul, and third, to wage war with the devil and destroy the devil's kingdom. And that concludes today's lesson.
Mr. Josh